Today I'm going to show you how I make photo keychains. The first thing you're going to need is an acrylic blank, a key ring, and a jump loop. The second thing is going to be to print and cut the photos that you'd like to place on your keychain. The machine that I'm using for this print and cut is a Cricut Explorer Air 2. I'm using Cricut's Printable Vinyl, and then my measurements for the photo is 2.5 inches in width and 2.5 inches in height because it is a circle. So you can use the cut file that came with the blank. If you buy them from Third Degree Laser Blanks, you can actually go onto their Facebook group and they will have the cut files and you just upload them into Design Space, which makes it really easy whenever you're making a keychain. If you see that when I take this out that it's not lined up, it's only because my printer did not print correctly, so I had to line it a little differently. What I'm doing here is now adding a strip of clear 651 vinyl. The brand that I'm using is Oracal, whatever you want to call it. And you're just going to cut 2 circles in the same size and shape of your photos. That's just going to be a protective layer so that when you put the photo on top, you're going to put this layer of the clear vinyl on top so that when you epoxy, your image is protected and you don't have to seal it with any spray or anything like that. So once that's done cutting, you're just going to go ahead and peel it off your mat. I know some people take care of their mats way better than I do. Mine has glitter and all kinds of crap on it, so it is what it is. You'll go ahead and just cut the 2 circles out from there. I placed mine really close together because I'm trying to save on vinyl, but if you space them apart, you shouldn't have that problem. Now we have our photos and we have our clear 651 vinyl. So now I'm just going to peel the protective cover off of the blank, and I'm only peeling off one side because I'm only working on one side right now. I want to leave the other one on just so that I don't have any scratches or scuffs on the other side when I'm working on this photo. Now you're just going to grab your photo and be very careful with peeling it away from the backing because it is a very thin photo. It's not as thick as sticker paper. It's just very, very thin. If you can see when I pull it off, it's very, I wouldn't say flimsy, but easy to tear, I guess you could say. And so you're just going to be very careful with placing it. I kind of just try to match it up with the keyhole, and place it on there. And don't worry if it's not perfectly aligned and you see a little bit of the photo overlapping on the side. You can always take your scissors, some precision scissors or an X-acto knife, and trim those little edges off around the blank. And I will show you how I do that here in just a minute. And so just smooth it out. Don't use a scraper tool yet or anything like that. You just want to use your fingers and smooth out the photo. Really, you just want to make sure that the photo is really adhered to the blank and that there's no air bubbles or anything poking up before you lay the clear layer on top. Now you're going to take the clear 651 vinyl, carefully peel it from the backing. And you'll notice too that the clear 651 vinyl will get fingerprints and everything on there. So barely touch it with your thumb and your fingertip as little as you can when you're placing it. And I'm just dusting a little more debris off so that none of that gets trapped under the clear vinyl. And again, just line it up as best as you can and place it over the photo. Alright, so just go ahead and smooth it out onto the photo. Sometimes there's going to be stuff that just kind of gets trapped in there. I noticed that when I was smoothing it out, a little tiny speck of glitter got trapped under that clear 651. But there's glitter everywhere in my house, so I mean, it's okay. At this point, it's okay to take your scraper or your squeegee or whatever you use and go ahead and smooth out that clear 651 vinyl over your keychain blank. Now that that side is done, we're going to start the other side. Just flip the blank around and go ahead and start peeling off that protective backing. Like I said, it's a little tricky at first, but You can either use your nail and damage your nail like I do, or use an X-acto knife or a weeding tool just to pick up that brown little piece of backing paper and then slowly peel it away. Alright, so I'm pulling that away now, and I'm ready to start on the new photo and new layer of 6x1 vinyl. Again, you want to be really careful when you're pulling that printable vinyl away from the backing, and you also don't want to scratch your picture because that'll mess up the image if you scratch it or anything on the front side. So just be really careful when pulling that away, and just kind of take your time. When I pulled the backing off of it, or pulled it away from the backing, the keyhole part didn't come out, so I'm just using my weeding tool to poke the hole through the other side and peel out that little piece that needs to come off. Again, you're going to do the same thing, just place the photo over the keychain carefully. Once it's on there, just make sure that you smooth it out like you did the other side. Make sure there's no debris on there so that when you place that clear 6x1 vinyl on top, there's nothing getting trapped underneath it. Once that's on there, just repeat the step of adding the clear 6x1 vinyl to the photo. Once you have it on there, just make sure that you smooth it out carefully just to avoid getting any air bubbles trapped in there. Now, like I said before, sometimes you're not going to lay the photo or anything right on top of it perfectly. So all you have to do is just take some scissors and cut any excess that's laid over the side of the blank. That way, when you epoxy, everything is lined up with the acrylic. The easiest way that I find to keep these little excess pieces all in one place is just pull them off of my scissors and keep them on my fingers until I'm all said and done. Then I will just kind of ball them up and throw them in the trash. Now that I've trimmed all the excess away from both sides of the blank, I'm going to go ahead and get it ready to epoxy. But if you want to skip that step, you can go ahead and just add your keychain hardware now. So that's what I'm going to show you right here. I have a key ring, I have a jump loop, and I have a tassel. The tassel's optional, but I love to add them just because it gives it a little more pop of color. So just speeding through the process of adding the tassel, the key ring, and the jump loop onto the keychain, and then closing the loop of the key ring, and that's pretty much it on that part. The tools that I used for this part were the orange pair of split ring pliers, and then the silver tool was a Gerber Gear multi-tool. So because I like the way that epoxy looks whenever it's cured and finished, I am going to epoxy this keychain. I take 2 mils of part A and 2 mils part B and mix them equally together. I don't mix it really fast because that creates more air bubbles, so I really take my time in mixing and getting all of the air bubbles out before I pour it onto the keychain. When you're mixing, just be sure to make sure you're scraping all the epoxy off of the edges and sides of that little container that you're mixing in, so that you're getting every little piece of epoxy into your mixture. And while this doesn't look like a lot of epoxy, it is plenty for just one side of a photo keychain like the one that I'm doing right now. So after spreading your epoxy around the keychain, you're going to go ahead and take what little you have left to go ahead and pull more epoxy towards the edges of the keychain. Doing that, just make sure that all of it gets coated on the outer edges so that whenever it's completely dried, you don't have any rough edges or bumps or anything that wasn't epoxied over. Once you're done spreading the epoxy around, if you notice some epoxy is drooped over to the edges, just take some gloves and wipe around the edges to take some of that epoxy off. I didn't put gloves on, that was my mistake, but if you do get epoxy on your fingers, just make sure to wash them really well. Okay, so it's the next day. I've let one side cure with epoxy, and I'm just going to show you guys how glossy and shiny that looks as a finish versus the other side, which hasn't been epoxied yet. It's more of a matte, still a little shiny, but it's not as glossy and smooth as this side is. And so I'm going to epoxy the other side, but what I wanted to show you guys was that sometimes when you epoxy and you're still kind of getting familiar with it, even if you're already experienced, sometimes you're going to have spills or it'll seep over to the other side. And on this keychain you can't really tell unless you look really close up. Right here there's a little bit of epoxy smudged on there, and I think that's pretty much, and then down here towards the bottom, I don't know if you can really see it, there's just a little smudge right there. And so I wanted to tell you guys and show you that with those little smudges, before you actually layer epoxy on there, you can actually get a little Q-tip and some nail polish remover, and just need to kind of soak it in there. And I just kind of usually dab it on anything. I don't have a tissue nearby, so I'm just going to dab it on my tablecloth. And you'll grab your blank or your keychain, and I'm just going to go over that area that had the little spill of epoxy and just rub, and you'll notice that that epoxy will come right off. It doesn't take much. And it won't ruin the picture or anything like that. It's just taking off that little spill so that when you put your epoxy layer on this side, it won't show through that you had any like little smudges or anything like that. And you can take your Q-tip and dip it back into the nail polish remover and just keep kind of swiping away. And then you can use the dry side just to dry it off. But I usually try to keep it soaked in the nail polish remover to get all of that off. And I'm just going to use a little bit more and just kind of dab it on the side. And again, there's a little area down here. I'm just going to clean it away. And because you already have that clear layer of vinyl on top of the photo, it's not going to ruin your image at all. It's going to be okay. And you just kind of clean it up a little bit more, and I've pretty much already cleaned everything up on this side. So it's ready for me to epoxy. And that's pretty much it for this video. I'm not going to show me epoxying this side because it's the same thing that I did for this side that I showed on the video. You just pour your epoxy onto the keychain while it's laying flat. You'll just pour a little bit on there right into the center of it. You can let it set for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and then start spreading it around with a popsicle stick and just pulling it towards the edges to where you make sure the edges are covered in the epoxy. If you let it set for that time, you don't have to worry about it spilling over much. You have a little more control over it. So especially when you go around the keyhole area, that tiny little area, you just kind of want to dab. It'll be flat like this, but you want to just dab with your popsicle stick like that around that area. You don't want to just swipe over it because it'll fall into that hole, and when epoxy dries and cures, it's going to be hardened into that hole, and you're going to have to use like a little maybe like a drill or your X-acto knife to try to poke it out, and it just becomes a headache. But if you just let it set before you start spreading it around, you'll actually have more control to where it won't droop in there. And if it does, like I said, whenever it cures, you can just use a X-acto knife or something to poke it out. But I usually let it sit on the keychain for a little while before I start spreading it around so that I have more control. And so then that's it. You go ahead and add your hardware once everything is cured. Like I said, you want to wait a day. So usually you would want to do this side, let it cure for a day, do this side, let it cure for a day, and then add your hardware with the little key ring, the jump loop, and then the tassel if you want. Any other little charms are optional. Okay, so this is how I make my photo keychains. Very cute gift to make for somebody. It's very personalized. It's something you can give to your mom, sibling. It's just something really cute to have and pretty inexpensive to make. These blanks are from 3rd Degree Laser Blanks, and they are, I think, 75 cents per blank, and that actually includes the hardware that comes with it, like the little jump ring and the key ring. and you can upgrade for I think $1 to get like the actual chain little link that comes with it. Their customer service is really fast and great, so I do recommend them. It's thirddegreelaser.com, I believe, but the link will be in the description below. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.